Alright, this is going to be a quick video or a not so quick video on how to make more or less a prepped model on Meshmixer. And so I'm sure there's a good way to do this in Exocad. I'm just not aware of it yet. Sometimes what I find is if I want to do a wax up in Exocad, I can't really just draw margins directly onto these teeth without them being prepped. And so it becomes necessary to do some amount of reduction so that you can actually have almost like a definitive margin to draw onto the model so that Exocad can build it as if it were a crown, and then we end up with a good wax up that way. So I'm going to just do a couple of teeth here and show you how I would do that. And so what I do is I use the select tool. Actually, let me go back here first. The first thing I need to do is I need to duplicate this model. Okay, so I need to have an extra one of these. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to just turn the visibility of that duplicate off right now. Let's go to the select tool, and I'm going to use the select tool and stop just shy of the gingival margin. Now, why am I doing that? Well, that's because you generally, when you do a wax up, you're going to want that wax up to stop right at the gingival margin, because when you create your putty matrix, that's going to enable the putty matrix to create sort of a gasket effect right against the tooth surface, so that all the excess bisacryl material or acrylic or whatever you're using is going to extrude out of the matrix and leave a nice flush margin right to the tooth surface. And if you've taken your your wax up well beyond the actual tooth margin and beyond the gingiva, it's just not going to work out too well. So anywhere that I'm extended past the gingival margin here, I want to back that off just a hair. Okay, so I'm going to come around on the facial, do the exact same thing. There we go. And now that I've done that, I can increase the spot size. Fill all of this in. And if you hear all that noise, that is the dogs fighting. So sorry about them. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to delete, which more or less just leaves a shell. And to the shell, I'm going to now select just a very small area. Select all this border. Clear that selection. I need to get right on the border here. Select it. There we go. Optimize boundary, and then I'm going to erase and fill. Now when I do this erase and fill, it's going to give me some kind of crazy proposal like this. I want to use the bulge function here to drag this down and more or less make these where they're a little bit ovate, not quite to that degree. So let me bring those back up, just slightly ovate right there. That's about what I want. So I'm going to accept that. And so now I have some ovate ponic sides. All right, let's turn this model off. Let's go to the other one. What I'm going to do with this model is I'm going to select it all. I'm going to, actually I don't even need to select it. I'm going to go to edit. I'm going to hollow it. And so what I'm doing here is I want to make a uniform amount of reduction. So let's say I want to reduce these teeth by 0.6 millimeters. So I'm going to say the offset distance is 0.6, update the hollow. And here's the result. So let's accept that. Okay, so this model doesn't look any different, correct? What I'm going to do is select and I'm going to select this entire exterior shell because there's two shells present here. There's this exterior shell, which I'm deleting, and that's going to leave this interior shell. Now if I select this, modify select all, and then I can go to edit and flip normals, and I turn it back inside out. So that model was turned inside out, and now I've flipped it back. And so essentially what that's done is that's left me a uniform 0.6, 0.7, I don't remember what I did, of reduction on this entire model. Now that's not that useful because, you know, it reduced the gingiva and everything else. However, when I kick back on this model, now what I have is a basically a prepped tooth here, and so I could draw a margin. So if I combine these, and you could obviously smooth these up a little bit, and I would suggest doing that. You know, before doing this, you could come back in, use your sculpt tools, perhaps your robust smooth, increase the size, and maybe we thin out some of these areas and undercuts. We could do the shrink smooth and maybe provide a little separation between those. But that basically leaves me some prepped teeth here now. And so we could combine the models, combine, and now you would export this, pull it into Exocad or whatever you're going to do your digital wax up on, and now you can draw a definitive margin line. And I would draw that margin line to right along this edge, and hopefully the auto margin detection functions would work on this, since there is a definitive finish line here. That would be an even more defined finish line if I had done the smooth boundary function, and it wouldn't be so jagged like you're seeing right here. So what is the net result of doing all this? Well, I'm going to import a couple of models just to show you what I really did in this case. And so I'm going to pull in the upper model in its entirety. Let's turn that off. So this was the unprepped model. I'm going to also import the prepped model. Alright, so if you look at this, this is one where I actually smoothed, and you can see much more definitive margins on this. And then I used this in Exocad. I drew definitive margins around all these, designed them just as if they were crowns, and that allowed me to generate a wax up. And so I'm going to find the final wax up, which is right here. Okay, and then finally, by doing a Boolean subtraction of the prepped model from the wax up, it generates these shell temps. So final shell temps, and this is what I end up with. So let me turn off the model. You can look internally here. These are the shell temps. Turn that back on, and you can see if I transform these would go on and off of this model. I've actually printed these. They drop right into place onto this printed model. So it's a really cool trick to have in your toolbox. Again, I'm sure there's a way to do this in Exocad that's far easier, but I like free stuff. I like free software, so I thought it was worth showing. All right, thanks.